think we're all set.
Yeah.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order the March 15, 2023 regular meeting of the Royal Oak Downtown Development Authority. First up, we're going to do public comment. So if you want to address, just wait to be recognized and we'll get you up here. Who wants to be first? Go ahead.
Hello, Rick Orlowski, 419 Virginia, Royal Oak. I just got a question as to what you guys were trying to do with the winter blast thing. Not that you had a little festival to bring people downtown in the winter, but more of, you had basically a food truck rally. I mean, if the point is to bring people to downtown to frequent the venues down here, I think you completely missed it with the food truck rally, because there was at least 6, maybe 7 food trucks, and a trailer selling beer and maybe some other alcoholic beverages not more than 20 yards from the entrance of WROK on 3rd. It made absolutely no sense to me. Now, I can see pop stand, hot dog stand, hamburger, something like that, you know, feed the kiddies. But that was ridiculous. If you were trying to get people to go to the venues, why would I leave the place? I mean, I'd have the kids work it, we'd feed them all full thing, and we'd leave. So next time you do that, I would think we might want to curb down the food truck part of it, and you know, maybe even get the zip line a little taller, because it certainly was not the Fremont experience. Let me put it to you that way. Secondly, with regards to parking, and I guess the finance director is going to come in and saying we're losing our ass on the structures. I mean, color me shocked, but I'm a little bit concerned here because Royal Oak is starting to remind me of the mid-90s in Pontiac. I mean, you guys think that you're the place, and it was a great place to be, and boy, everybody had to go down there, and it died, okay? And you can kill a place very quickly if you don't get your hands around this, okay? People don't want to park in structures. I don't know why, but it's obvious they don't. And if you don't figure out why they don't and fix it, they're not going to park there. You can't kill all the surface parking and make it so incredibly hard to do and just say, well, they'll just have to get used to parking in the structures. No, they won't, or they don't. They can go somewhere else. They can go to Ferndale, they can go to Berkeley, they can go to Clawson, they can go almost every place else. And I think you're already getting business feedback that they are. So I don't know the answer to the structure problem, but taking away all the surface parking for the medical building I don't think was a great idea. Too late now, but we got to get our hands around this parking thing, or we're going to see. I mean, I used to close Chalm's Oyster Bar not too many years ago. I actually closed the place at 2 o'clock. That place isn't open past 1, and that's on a good night. Your business is down, and you can actually watch the business lighten up as you go north, where there's fewer and fewer surface lots. So. Don't know what else to tell you, but if we don't fix the parking, this is going to be getting ugly in a hurry. Thank you.
Thank you. Serge.
Thank you. Bill Harrison, 2729 Trafford, Royal Oak. Thank you for hiring the promotion firm to counteract the negative TV and press coverage of the MPS parking meter system. However, marketing has 4 Ps: product, price, packaging, and promotion. Promotion is only a quarter of marketing. The MPS meter system is still not a marketable product. Why did the city manager not accept the DDA recommendations for the parking meter system? You are the parking committee. The city's course of action is to continue negotiations with MPS. To date, this has only led to alleged progress. The city needs to go on the offensive. Hire an attorney that knows how to play hardball. Escrow payments to MPS until they fix the system. That's what my tenants would do if I didn't fix a leaky roof. How is the surface lot MPS meter system performing? And why is the city throwing good money after bad? If you bought a washing machine that was nothing but trouble and the manufacturer would not fix it, Would you buy a dryer from the same make? Why then would you expand the MPS system to the surface lots when the on-street system is not working and MPS will not fix it? Flint was one of the first ones to have the MPS meter system, and they've had trouble since day one. New Jersey, the first MPS installation, did not extend after the 5-year contract was up. Flint is 4 years into a 5-year contract and will not renew. Flint has not had much cooperation from MPS on large issues. MPS will not take responsibility for a problem unless you can provide proof that there is an issue. Flint also has coin and credit card issues just like we have in Royal Oak. The MPS system does not reduce the number of people required to manage the system. The business owners are burdened with assisting people in using the meters, same as in Royal Oak. Flint did not expand the MPS system to include the surface lots. MPS wanted a separate contract for the surface lots that would have given them a full 5 years. Is this the same in Royal Oak? Do we have a separate contract for the surface lots? Finally, Birmingham's Civic Smart Liberty smart meters emulate the old-style meter heads. The system provides the automated functions alleged by MPS, 2 sentences, by the MPS, except violations are reported to the police and ticketing is done by the police. Last sentence, the system is working. It can even find a vacant parking space near your destination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Frank Hobrecht, and I live at 1835 North Lafayette. Mr. Karlowski took the wind out of my sail because he said businesses might be leaving because of the parking system. Last week I gave out an eviction notice. Tenant's been there multiple years, but a bad fall, a worse Christmas, in January and February, nothing. And there's nothing I can do. I can't pay you. That building pays $59,000 in property taxes. You gave me a $52,000 increase on my taxable value, so I'll be breaking $62,000, $63,000 this year. I can't make those payments because my tenants have no customers. So we're done. I don't know where we're going to be here, but I know we have MPS until the year 2031. Am I going to be here? Is anybody going to be here till 2031? We have empty streets. I just walked up from Lincoln to here. The first block, Lincoln to 7th, not one car. 7th to 6th, a couple of cars. 6th to 5th, a couple more cars. So we are doing something very, very wrong. I want to point out, because I've got plenty of stories about my history with this organization. Mr. Brake, you don't know about this city attorney that came to defend a tenant that hadn't paid us a penny of rent. Moved in, never paid us a single penny. And we're in front of the judge. And guess who shows up? City of Royal Oak attorney. A duty to mitigate blight. That was the motion to intervene. The judge threw it out. Guess what the city attorney did? Filed again. Got to pay the attorney, got to pay him everything. We go back to court. It got thrown out again. And never with prejudice. Just keep on coming back. More legal, more fight, more lawyers, and ultimately, I lose. It took us 2 years to get this tenant out, and $38,000 in legal fees. It was ridiculous, but we just kept on coming back and kept on coming back. But we're done. We have to do something better. And there's no history. There's nothing new being said here. I hope we don't give MPS the rights to the surface lots. That might be a saving grace. But we have a real problem, and I have to evict a tenant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Anybody else to address the board today? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Move on to the agenda. Item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes from February 15th, 2023.
I move to approve.
Motion by Director Dunstan,
I'll second.
second by Director Leclerc. Any questions? Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Item number 4 is expense items, monthly expenses. This is for the board's review. No action is necessary. If you want to ask questions of staff, now would be the time.
Where's Daniel driving? No, I'm just kidding.
No questions?
Negative.
Okay. We will move on. Item number 5. We have a presentation from Deborah Peck, the Lichtenberg, Finance Director.
Hello, thank you. My name is Deborah Lichtenberg. I am the city's finance director. I joined the city last June. So we're currently in the process of our first go round with the budget. And as part of that budget review, we have been doing some deeper dives into some of the financials. I'm here today just to provide you with some higher level historical context of the parking system, especially for those of you who are newer to the DDA. It is, there are a few pieces to the parking system, so I wanted to help you understand how those pieces fit together. And again, this is just a high-level summary of the past 5 years of data and the projection for this current fiscal year that we're in. So within this document, again, it provides historical data from the 2017-2018 fiscal year. And just a reminder, we are a June 30 year end, through the current year projection, so where we expect to end up at June 30 of this year. The slides that you're going to see include all of the revenue and expenditure items for the auto parking fund. So that includes the parking for the on-street metered parking, the surface lots, and the parking structures, as well as selected line items from the general fund budget, which would relate to the violation revenue related to parking tickets and such. The revenue that's being presented is at the gross amount. It is not reduced for the revenue sharing with MPS, and the expenditures reflect the portion of revenue sharing that will be paid to MPS. Also included later in the slides is a breakdown between the parking decks and the surface parking. So looking first at the revenue picture, I have set these items side by side in these columns just so you can get a separate view. The orange column to the left on each year represents the general fund portion that I mentioned, which is related to tickets and violation revenue. That's the items that are processed through the court. The gold bar in each of the years represents the revenue in the auto parking fund, and that represents the payments that come in at the time that somebody parks, as well as permit parking. You will notice that there was the expected dip in these years related to COVID. And I want to mention that the projection for the current year all the way to the right, does include a $1 million transfer in of ARPA funds that were approved. The trend line that you see is the impact of both of these items combined. The next slide shows the same data. It just shows those two pieces stacked together to give you more of that visual view of all of the pieces of the parking system combined. Then moving on to the expenditure side. Again, this reflects the payments that would be made to MPS under the current agreement. What this does not include, because the auto parking fund is an enterprise fund, the financial statements, the income statement side does not include the principal payments for debt, because that is reflected on the balance sheet side. A little bit later, I've factored that in so you can see the impact of those items, but I want it to be clear to you what is in these numbers. The other thing that these numbers do not include is actual amounts spent on capital purchases. Again, those are recorded as assets on the balance sheet, but they are reflected through these financial statements through depreciation over the expected life of the assets, and primarily that is the parking structures. And again, this is the same information, just presented in a combined fashion so that you can see the full impact. The next slide combines the earlier revenue slides and nets that with the earlier expenditure slides. So this presents the net revenue, or you could also refer to this as the net income or net loss. The line here, which is a little hard to see on the screen where the dollar sign is, that is the zero mark. Anything that is above that was positive. Anything that was below that was negative or a loss. And again, the 23 projection does include that $1 million transferred from ARPA. Combining these so that you can see, again, that complete impact on the parking system as a whole shows that, again, these red bars are during COVID, and then this is charting our exit from those difficult times during the pandemic. Again, I want to remind you, this does not include the bond principal payments. That is, again, reflected in the balance sheet. So one of the other things that we always do, as I mentioned, we're in budget season right now. So I wanted to take a look at how the revenue for the current year that we're in compares to what we had budgeted. The orange column on the left represents the budget, and the gold column on the right represents where we are anticipating the year to end up. So we are anticipating a budget shortfall based on what we would have projected last year at this time. Again, this slide represents the revenue. The second slide is the same type of information with the budget and the projection. And this is the expenditures. I didn't point out on the previous one, it does show in the table at the bottom, but the columns all the way to the far left are the auto parking fund itself. The columns in the middle are the general fund portions, and then to the right is the total. of those items combined. So again, this slide combines those two previous, the revenue, nets out the expenditures, and shows what the combined net revenue, what we had anticipated. In this slide, it's that gold on the left is where we had budgeted for. The blue column to the right is where we are actually projecting the year to come in. Overall, we are anticipating a budget shortfall in both the auto parking system itself and the general fund portion related to parking. So just looking at what the impacts of these budget shortfalls may be, in the auto parking fund itself, it may indicate that a combination of the current combination of parking rates and usage are not generating enough cash or net revenue to sustain the operations and meet debt obligations. And in the general fund, a budget shortfall in one area, such as violations, may result in the need to reduce spending in another area or department. Going over to the balance sheet side of things, this slide looks at our current assets, which is primarily the cash that's on hand, any investments, and any short-term items that will quickly convert to cash. Over the past several years, you can see that the current assets, the cash position, has declined, and this again is focused just on the parking fund itself, Fund 516. And then when we look a little deeper and we look at working capital, which is calculated by looking at the current assets minus any current liabilities. So it's the money that we have basically in our checking account to use to pay our current bills. In an enterprise fund, this is considered one of the best quick indicators of current financial strength. And it's similar in a governmental fund to fund balance. So you'll see that we are projecting a shortfall in working capital. And that would be, we finished 22, the prior fiscal year, in a deficit, and we're projecting that again for the current fiscal year that we're in. This slide is the slide that breaks out the parking structure activity from the other parking activity, which would be meters, lots, and any parking permits. So the parking structure related piece of this is the gold bars. And then the portion that is in the general fund is the grayish bar. And the orange column is the other parking. So what those two items, the other parking in the general fund, that is the violation revenue, and the orange bars are the on-street lots and permit parking. And the trend line there is the combined total of the other parking. So again, I want to point out the note at the bottom is important because it does not include the bond principal payments or capital outlay. And then one last slide. This is a slide that does include the bond principal payments that occur on the balance sheet side, and it does not include the depreciation that is in the expenditure side. Depreciation is non-cash. Remember, we spent that cash when we bought the asset, and we're recouping it on the income statement side through depreciation. So this reflects that information. And again, this is the other parking included here. So as you can see, despite the significant increase in violation revenue and the transfer of $1 million in ARPA funds, the parking system is not currently generating sufficient revenue to cover all of its costs, including the bond payment. So again, it's a high-level overview, but it is a lot of data. But I wanted to present this to you now so that you have an understanding of what this trend has been and what the current position of the parking system is.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm sure we have some questions here, and everybody will get a chance, and we'll go through there. One quick thing I just want to clear up for the board here. When you speak of, as you go through this and you speak of the general fund, you're talking about a general fund within the parking system, correct? You're not talking about the city's general fund.
So the court is part of the city's general fund. Parking violations and the revenue that's generated by that is part of the court operations. But when we're talking about the entire parking system, it incorporates both what happens when you pay for parking and what happens when you park and you don't pay for parking. So the general fund piece is that the part that goes through the court, but it is only related to parking violations. It is not all of court operations. It's just that portion related to the parking violations.
Okay, I think I'm clear on that. Director Dunstan, you want to start?
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you, Ms. Lichtenberg. So 10 years I was on the DDA prior to coming back, and had asked for this kind of information numerous times, and to see it now is really appreciated, and it's very clear. I did have some questions, and it might not be directly for her. Just like it's projected net revenue for like auto parking. Are we able to really go down and deep dive into the usage of these meters with this new system? In other words, if we're talking parking rates versus usage to figure out where we need to be, obviously if there's less usage, we're going to have a shortfall. The way you might think to fix that would be to raise rates, which will probably create more shortfall. So I'm just kind of figure how that balance is achieved.
So I will respond to that. The company can provide what meters, what they generate on an individual basis. They provided us information like the top 10, where people are more frequently apt to park. So we can drill down into that. Deborah would not have that information.
No, I didn't think.
Yeah, that's something that we'd have to get from the parking administrator. And you bring up a good point. I mean, it is a delicate balance that with this complex system that likely that we would be looking at some sort of a rate increase, but if it's too much, if we go back to our college economics class, it's called, elasticity, and so it would keep people from parking. So the thought is where we're concentrating our efforts right now is not generating so much revenues from fines, but from people actually paying to park. And so if there is a longer period of time that someone can park, if it's it gives some allowance for that grace period for someone that pulls up to a spot, and to determine, if they want to park or if they're just, pulling over to the side of the street to check their smartphone or whatever the circumstance is. It will be a better system to perform. So, we haven't been in the system very long, but this is the information that we're carefully monitoring. But with that being said, if we make some changes and we shift over some areas that we're just doing a manual enforcement, manual, keep in mind, as what our previous police chief indicated, is that less than half of the people actually park or pay for parking. And whereas this system, it's camera enforced, and so the number of individuals that have indicated are in those parking spaces, it's much higher in that regard. So this is all to kind of take that into consideration, but wanted to give you again kind of a high level view of where we're at. So if you want that very specific information, you're going to have to ask that far in advance for us to drill down in that, and I can ask the parking manager to provide that. But trust me, you can kind of quickly become overwhelmed with the amount of information. So, and especially in raw spreadsheets, it's a bit much to take in. But I think in the Rich and Associates, they were able to, really at an executive level to say, where's the system at?
And then just one quick follow-up, maybe Ms. Luckenberg can answer this also, but I know the garages are assets in the parking fund. Are lots just city-owned, or are they considered an asset to the parking?
Those are a fixed asset as well, so they have appreciation that is calculated as part of this. And again, this is different from the general fund versus an enterprise fund. So you are depreciating out those assets that, there's a certain life that those assets have, with the notion that eventually we'll end up replacing them. In the surface lots, in that case, it'd be, digging everything up and resurfacing the parking lot to generate a brand new parking lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Director London.
Well, first, it's hard for me to talk about this issue without getting emotional, because I said over a year ago this was the single most catastrophic thing to happen to the businesses in Royal Oak. A year ago. And instead of making it better, the city has doubled down to make it worse. So now it's kind of funny to me that the city is seeing themselves what the parking is doing. No one's coming. Their parking revenue is down. They have to ticket less people. They're making less money in the meters because we train the people, train customers, train our community, don't come to Royal Oak. And they've been successful at that. It's far easier to retain a customer than to get a person back. So now we're down this path, losing customers over a year and a half. And to get them back is going to be such a uphill slide that I don't think most of us will make it. So it's devastating to me because I own a business and I see it every single day. The garages, what I hear from my female customers in particular, is they don't feel safe in them. Now, I'm a structure person myself. When I go to other cities, I have parking behind my store, so I don't use them in Royal Oak. So I don't really use the structures much to say that they don't feel safe to me, but I think they need more lights, possibly. I think that's a good thing to evaluate it in the evenings. Why don't women feel safe in these structures? And we should look that up. And then your conclusion, that paragraph just to me was kind of funny, that despite the significant increase in violations, when you ticket, when customers leave the city with millions of dollars of tickets, you're telling them, don't come back. Parking should be welcoming and easy, not punitive. And our whole system is punitive. So you haven't created enough revenue because you're telling people, don't come. We will ticket you and you will leave angry, don't return. And we've been very successful at that messaging. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yeah.
On the budget, right, so slide 9, who determined the budgets?
So that was done in the finance department. So that is based on the activity for the year to date, and then we projected that out based on where we anticipate
I was trying
the
to
rest of
understand
the
why
year.
we would budget that we're gonna have nearly, $5.7 million in fines. I don't know why we would budget for that. That's like saying that we're gonna budget that we're gonna give everybody tickets. We wanted this to happen in this budget, and I don't understand why we would shoot for that to be a goal. It actually looks like we're achieving our goal in that sense.
Let me jump in. So here's a couple dynamics. Number one, Deborah Lichtenberg was not here.
I'm just asking the general.
No, I know.
That's not her fault.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's fair. So here's the deal. Going into the arrangement with MPS, they provided us with some preliminary information. So it was, we're going into a new system. They said what we project out, that's what the police chief, the prior chief, not the current one, relayed to Deborah's predecessor and just said, all right, the company is indicating that we're going to be bringing in this amount of fines. Of course, we're going to be adjusting that based on the level of activity, and what the hope is, and with renegotiating the contract, we should have less of a reliance. Again, we should be bringing in more on people that pay in the meters and not rely so heavily on the fines. But yeah, it was an anomaly going into a brand new system, but no, that is not our goal. So that's why I jumped in to say, hey, this is something we should be striving.
I would never want to put this out as a budget to say that is the goal, because that's what a budget is.
No,
it's a goal.
I totally.
I don't want to hit that goal.
Yeah,
that's garbage.
Yeah, I understand why you're asking the question, and that's why I'm jumping in. That's at that time, we had a limited amount of information, but absolutely, that is not something that we want to strive. It really should be striving to greater amount of compliance, and that people can use the system and it works within the parameters. We now have the data from Rich and Associates. We didn't know how people are using it, and now that we have that information that they provided to us back in January, we have a better sense of what the normal parking behavior is. And absent that, it was just flying blind.
So have we set our 23-24 budget?
We're in the process of going through that right now.
For just this specific thing right here?
So, no, all of the funds will be presented at the same time, and I'll refer back to, I'll stop talking and let...
We're in the development stage for the 23-24 budget. So yes, I anticipate this number looking different.
Yeah, I just would like to get a request that we get to see this before whatever. I mean, I just would like to see the budget before it becomes law budget, right? I'd like to see. I just want to see what our vision is from a budget standpoint of where violations are going to come in, because I want to see what exactly to your point. I want to see us strive to make that number less.
Yeah, I would say on a preliminary basis, that's fine, or even if that's, Mr. Chairman, if you, especially if you sign a committee, that's fair enough to, based on the data that we have now, what we project. So, no, that's a good question.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Bragg, just quickly, I don't know if this is for you but when on this one slide here, when we're talking about projected expenditures compared to the budget. Mm-hmm. What specific items are we including in that as expenditures? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, it's things.
How does that budget amount arrive?
So on the expenditure side or on the revenue?
On the expenditure
Okay,
side.
so on the expenditure side that you have normal operations, and so there are personnel that are associated with that cost. Yeah, right. That's out of the Department of Public Services. They maintain and keep the lots clean and that sort. And then there's the cost of the electricity, but probably the bigger expense is the debt expense. That's like, for instance, the 11-mile parking garage and other debts associated with the other garages. But at that, I'll defer to Ms. Lichtenberg, who can speak much more generally about that, but
sure.
From a high level.
Again, it includes the interest portion of the bond payment, but not the principal portion. It also includes the management fee that's paid to Parkrite related to the structures. It also includes the projected amount of the revenue sharing that would go to MPS. So just as a reminder,
Okay,
the revenue is shown gross, and so we show the portion that is paid to them in revenue share in the expenditures.
That was what I was trying to get to. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Are you able to give us a snapshot of the years prior to 2018? And was the revenue, the 5 years prior to that, steady, or was it going down as indicated in the relationship of 2018 to 2019? Obviously, the blip of COVID is the blip of COVID, but I'm just curious, what were the trends prior to COVID and prior to MPS?
We can provide that information. The main reason I focused on these years that you see is because that encompasses, I believe, all of the parking decks that we currently have operating, includes all of that in here. When we go out into the years where the decks were being constructed, the data gets a little bit murkier because we have construction costs and other things looking, included in that. So that was why I focused on this period of time, but we certainly have information from earlier years as well.
I'm just curious about the trends prior to COVID and prior to MPS, and were we seeing a decrease in revenue in proportion to the amount of spaces we had prior, just to understand what the trends were. Thank you.
We can do that.
Any other questions? Mark?
If we look at slide, I guess 3 or 4, we see for the 2023 projected number for Fund 516, 4.9 million in projected revenue, and that includes the portion of money that will eventually go to MPS, correct?
Correct. That includes all of it, everything that was collected.
And then if we look at slide 5, our expenditures for Fund 516 are about the same number, 4.9 million, but that includes the amount of money that was or will be paid to MPS, correct?
Correct.
And then if we look back on that same slide to 2019, for Fund 516, the expenditures are $200,000 less, but that would hypothetically not include any money to MPS because the MPS contract didn't exist then, correct?
Correct.
Are you able to explain in any detail, I don't know if this is something you'd have to go back and look at, but what is included in those expenditures that the number went up $200,000 despite the fact that half of it's being paid to MPS? So in other words, what are we replacing from prior years with that half of MPS money?
I don't have it at my fingertips, but I can certainly look into that. My guess would be that it has to do with bond interest, which is higher in earlier years and decreases as you go out, as well as depreciation. But I'm happy to look into that more for you.
Yeah, one item, let me jump in. Keep in mind the 11-mile parking garage, that came online, Tim, was at the middle of 2019. So, and those expenses, it's kind of like purchasing a house. You wouldn't pay for them immediately, but following, that's when the payments would start to kick in. So
is it possible that there were cost savings from the MPS contract and that those expenditures that were now offset by this increasing interest payments? Is that, I guess I'm just trying to get a better understanding of that concept.
Understood. Let me look into it and get back to you. I I don't have that information off the top of my head, and I don't want to speak off the cuff related to that, but I believe I understand your question, and I'm happy to provide more information on that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the finance director? Director Yazbek.
Yeah, if there's a way to just, get some kind of breakout of the big expenses, because it is interesting how the expenses increase from 18, 19, and 20, start to decrease, and then of course in the projection 23 there, they've increased significantly. It'd be, I think, interesting to look at those, a breakout of at least the bigger expenses to understand what's happening there. Likely additional parking structures is what happened in 18, 19, and 20, but then it did start to decrease and now increase again in the projected amount. I think that would be interesting for us to see.
I can do that. I can provide that for you.
A couple other general questions, I guess. In 2018, it appears that the parking system was pretty darn healthy. Would you agree with that?
That is definitely what the slide with the current assets and the working capital shows.
And although expenses were high, the revenue,
if I might interrupt just for a moment, I do want to point out that incorporated in this, the 2018 number for working capital, there still would have been some of the bond proceeds included in that number that hadn't been expended to finish the construction. So that number would be a little misleading in that sense.
What do you mean?
That's the money we borrowed. So you take out a loan, you have all this cash, then you use that through a construction fund. So she's saying that it's distorting that amount. If we didn't take out that loan, it wouldn't be anywhere near that amount.
So that's a slide further down. It shows that when you, I guess the balance sheet slide, it
Yes.
shows in 2018 over 20 million, and then in 2019 it drops down all the way to 7 or 8 million.
Yes, so in these slides, again, we're looking at the balance sheet side of things, and in the first slide, we're only looking at the asset portion. So when we got ready to build the parking structure, we issued bonds. So we incurred debt, but we got cash. So included in this would be the proceeds that we got from selling those bonds. What is in this number still is some of that money that we got from selling the bonds that we had not yet dispersed out to the contractor for building it.
So
So if we were to look at the other side of the balance sheet, the offset would be a liability for the bond obligation, so those would net out. But because we're only looking at that top part of the balance sheet, we're only seeing the cash from that bond issuance that's still in there.
So that 11 or 12 million reduction, that were, in your opinion, that was the bond proceeds, the majority of that?
A portion of it, so that is distorted related to the bond proceeds. With that in mind, if I were to take that out, I would anticipate, and don't hold me to this where my cursor is, that it would be probably closer to the $10 million mark. But again, that's a ballpark based on this trend.
Are the assets in the parking fund, is that cash used for other things?
The money that's in the parking fund is only used for parking fund related activities.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were generating, the parking system was generating a lot of money, increasing in 18, 19, 20, and then of course COVID. I was just surprised looking at it, how expensive it was to operate the system in 2018, 2019. So that's why I would like to see a breakout of some of the bigger expenses.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a real quick, kind of a part B to my previous inquiry. In addition to 516, while you're drilling down, and to kind of follow up on Director Yesbeck's comment just now, if we could get the same kind of information for 101, I'm really curious about that. The expenditures being kind of negligible in 18, 19, and 20, and then being almost $2 million in projected for 23, and I realize that includes the portion going to MPS, but the almost $2 million is about $400,000 more than half of the revenue for parking violations. So I'm curious what other costs are included in that.
The other part that has increased is each ticket is mailed out. And so there's been a significant increase in printing and mailing costs as well. This does not include any personnel costs from the court. I was strictly looking at what are the hard costs directly related, and it's primarily postage, printing, and the share of costs that goes to MPS.
So would you say that, and I don't know if you've looked at this, so maybe you don't have the answer, and this is something else you can get back to us on, but in addition to the 1/2 of the parking violation money that's going to MPS, the only other difference is these costs associated with the mailing and postage and so forth with the tickets?
I believe so, but I will verify that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Yeswick.
Do we know if under the MPS agreement, is the city 100% responsible for the expenses of sending out those tickets, or does that come off the top before the split?
So we have an agreement with MPS in which they mail the initial ticket, so the city pays for that service. Subsequent notices that go out from the court, if someone is fighting a ticket and has an appearance, that would be included. If there are second notices that need to go out, that is done by the court. That is not provided by MPS.
So MPS covers the initial mailing, the initial ticket, and we take over after that?
Correct.
So the court expenditures come out of the parking fund also then?
The court expenditures do not. Those are the ones that are categorized in that 101 general fund portion.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank
For the
you.
information, and we hope to hear back from you soon through Mr. Twing.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to the regular agenda. Okay, item number 6, Farmers Market, Sights and Sounds. Mr. Twing?
Certainly, very briefly, Shelley's here from the Farmers Market. You may recall that last year the DDA provided funding for Sights and Sounds. This did go to the Marketing Committee, and the Marketing Committee is recommending funding it again going forward. It's actually included in your budget half this year already, half this fiscal year, and what you would really be adding would be the money for next year in and approving the agreement. And Shelley's here to answer questions and give you an overview if you have any questions of her.
Go ahead, Shelley, you start out and then.
So I know Christy was going to the subcommittee, and basically it was suggested or recommended from the committee that we look at the sponsorship, because this was for I think it was originally called Beats and Sound or something, the 16,000 for our sound system portion. But it was suggested that maybe we could get somebody else to do that, save a little money. And so we did that, and we have, and we're really excited because now we've switched it to sound and entertainment because we have saved some money on the actual sound portion of it, but we are now able to use that to get bigger bands, to get more people, to draw a bigger crowd. So we're really excited about that possibility. And we have we're thrilled that we have a lot going on for the whole family to do. There's a lot of kids activities as well as the adults. And so we're excited to have you guys sponsor it again this year.
Okay. Questions? I just have a couple here. So this document here, this Motor Town Sound?
Yes.
Is a contractor?
Yes.
Okay, and this is what they've submitted to you?
Yes, to Christy and I,
Okay.
yes.
Gotcha.
Yep, this came to us.
And comparable to last year's event, are we kind of looking at the same thing?
Yes, it would provide the exact same thing. The company, Tom Nikowitz, that we had originally, he was wonderful, he was fantastic, and this really is apples to apples, so we did do our research on this. He's just, he's used to going to other states and doing big, huge concerts and everything, and he was local, and we wanted to use somebody local originally. This gentleman is pretty local too, but I think it was just more than what we needed to necessarily. So it is basically apples to apples. We did get one other quote that was slightly less than this, so we didn't go for we kind of went for middle of the road to make sure we had the same quality.
Okay. My last question was, and maybe the committee kind of went over this, I don't know. I was not able to attend this event. Were you as promoters or sponsors satisfied with the event last year and the way it went and
definitely.
the turnout?
Yes, we had a very nice turnout. We look forward to building it for years to come too.
Okay, so you have scheduled four dates?
Correct.
Okay.
And it's in conjunction with our food truck rally, so it's already a great event that was popular anyway. And so now when we add these concerts and great music, great bands, it just brings more and more people to downtown
Thank you.
Royal Oak.
Any questions? Tim, is there a suggested resolution there?
No, unfortunately, there wasn't a cover memo put together in time for the meeting. But
we
we
need
would
one
simply
for
be
this,
looking
correct?
for a resolution to approve an authorization to execute an agreement with the farmers market.
Dr. Yasbeck.
I'll make a motion to support the sites and farmers market sites and sounds, and to authorize execution of an agreement of a $16,000 sponsorship.
I'll second.
Supported by Director Yasbeck, second by Director Leclave. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Jason too for helping.
Yeah.
Item number 7, 2023-2024 budgets. Mr. Twain.
You saw both of these budgets at your last monthly meeting. We took them both to each of the committees to go over parts of the budget. The first one that's here under item A is the operating budget for fiscal year 23-24, which starts July 1st of 2023 and runs through June 30th of 24. The operating fund is the fund that's generated from the DDA levy on the base year property tax values in the downtown, and a small portion of the DDA district that's not in the TIF district. As you'll see in the spreadsheet, the column that starts out 23, 24, it's pretty much about $50,000 in revenue a year, and what it covers is operational activities and training, education, and some wages of your staff. There is a suggested resolution there if the board's comfortable with the budget is presented.
Any questions for Mr. Twing? Seeing none? Director Dunstan.
I'll move the approval.
Motion by Director Dunstan,
I'll second.
second by Director Keith. If there's no questions, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. That was just for the operating fund, correct, Mr. Twing?
Correct.
Okay.
The second one, your development fund, is obviously the larger fund. It's generated from the tax increment revenue capture in the downtown district. And again, it runs the same period. The spreadsheet that's included includes the current fiscal year, so you can see the comparison, and then the last column is the proposed budget for 23-24 for the same time period. Again, this went to each committee. The infrastructure committee went over most of the contracted service line items and was supportive of those, and the marketing committee looked at most of those that are listed under Main Street Committee and Promotions. Unless you would like me to go through this, I'll defer, and there is a suggested resolution, and I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Mr. Twing? I know we did spend a lot of time at this at the community level, so
I'll make a
hopefully
motion.
resolve.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Director Keith,
Second.
second by Director Legasio. Okay. If there's no further questions, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Did you want to review item C there? Tim, I know we discussed it.
It is the standard goals and objectives that the DDA has looked at. Again, these were presented. I have not heard of any revisions from either the committee or the board. The format, I will point out, will change based on a request from the finance department. What we'll end up doing is taking the goals that are listed 1 through 7 and pairing the objectives more towards them and with them directly in a different format, but they won't be necessarily reworded. They'll just be a different format when you may see it in the city's budget when it's finished. So that's the primary thing, unless you have revisions. I would just ask for a motion to approve those, and we'll go forward.
Okay.
Can you add something about parking to get rid of lower violations? I'm just kidding.
I'm not kidding. Our goal is to provide adequate and safe parking. I don't know if we achieve that.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Twing? We've used this document for a lot of years, as long as I've been around, and we have used it on occasion when we've needed to review exactly what the DDA does from time to time when issues pop up. So it's important for us to have. And the city always includes it within their budget packet. So, if nothing else, Mr. Tween is looking for a motion.
A motion to approve.
Motion by Director Leclave, second by Director Dunstan. If there's, yes, Director
I would
Dunstan.
just ask that as we go through the year, and I know this is kind of a living document, that we do look at some of Ms. Lichtenberg's suggestions are pretty good, I think. far as timeframes and whatnot. I think we should take some of those into account.
Okay. We can definitely, am I right, Ms. Twain? This is a living document that
Well, certainly,
we need to make.
it's going to end up, as I said, in a different format. It will end up as written in the city's budget once it's taken through, so it'll be in that document. But it's living in the sense that you can obviously change those as you go through the year, just as you can amend and revise your budget documents that you just approved a minute ago.
Okay. So there is I'm sorry.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
From the memo from Deborah Lichtenberg, her question on the bottom of her email says, why are there two separate DDA funds? Is that the operating budget we just approved and then
Yeah, the developmental
the development
budget.
budget?
Yes.
Is there a defined direction to combine them into one fund, as she suggests here?
Is the question why there's two different funds?
No, is there direction to combine them as she asks?
No, there was a question as to why they were separate, and I answered that as part of the budget process with the finance director. There are two different collection mechanisms for where the funds are coming from, and so we do need to track them separately and how they can be used. So whether or not the numbers stay the same or there's a different cost center, that's something the finance director will decide, but we do need to track them separately.
Yeah, and throughout our organization, we have like 30 plus funds, so she's trying to reduce the number of them. It does not apply here.
Sure.
But it's a good question. She's asking that. I've sit through all of the department directors, and I thought there was way too many funds when I started here, so, yeah.
So we'll always have two.
Correct. Yeah, there will not be any change, but it's in fairness, we need to ask the question, and Tim is providing the answer, and I'm satisfied with it, that needs to be maintained the way it's set up.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a motion on the table to accept this document, and it has been seconded. If there's nothing else, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. Item number 8 is reports for you. I don't think there's anything, the monthly report from Siren and the Sarah birthday event. So those are for your review at any time. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to bring to the board's attention at the time? Seeing none?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Director Van Son.
Does this report intend to provide also any newsworthy events other than just reporting on the impact of the PR program?
You're talking about the Siren communication?
Yeah. Yep. So if they highlight when certain businesses are perhaps featured in the news that they probably place, but there are other events that happen that in the city that I'd be curious whether or not those could be included in this as well.
In the report or?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure that's something we can talk to Lindsay about. And
certainly. We can talk to them. Most of this is in relation to their activity in terms of what you have them under contract for.
Right.
So it's what they're doing. And,
yeah.
Right.
But it would be good if it gave us a holistic monthly report on all the newsworthy events within the city. But maybe that exists somewhere else.
Is it possible for them to come in?
I don't know.
Is it possible in their contract that they could actually come in during these reports, because then they hear it from...
Say that again?
To actually hear it from them personally, like to them?
Oh, certainly. You can have them come periodically. They simply set this up monthly to give you status. You know, we can have them come next month to the meeting.
Yeah, I would think quarterly, unless there's something issue-specific that you want to ask them. But yeah,
Right.
I don't know if it's really necessary for them to
Yeah.
come each and every
Yeah, I didn't
month.
say everyone, but I was just
Right.
wondering if it is in the contract,
Yeah.
they do have to come here.
Yeah, and I would also encourage the board members, if there's individual questions, get with Daniel that he can ask, that, so you're not waiting until the following meeting. There's some things that we can get to you a whole lot quicker, so, yeah.
One last, Gary has found a potential promoter to fill in for the folks at Pride. He was supposed to be here tonight to mention it, but he's not, so I'm just making everyone aware that potentially, if that all works out, there still may be hope for Pride Royal Oak.
Okay, just a reminder, they're gonna have to come to committee.
Yeah, of course.
Because we have to start the process all over again, because the contract is with the promoter, so there is no contract as of right now.
Right.
So, just a reminder.
Just a frag note.
Okay, anything else?
Sir?
Seeing none?
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Director Yazvik and a second by Director Lula-Clave. Anything else? Nothing? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And we are adjourned.
Did you know